back house, get married in the barn. Any smiles, get married in the barn. Okay. Some marriages are performed in the big house. We've got records of things like that. But what if you land on the back house? What's humorous? What's in the back house? 2-holer, 3-holer, 4-holer. Oh yeah, fine. So anyway, we don't. Anyway, childhood's game. There's other childhood versions of that. Okay. These women that I've interviewed for that are now gone. They were telling me stories of 19th century, late 19th century children's game. Kids say a lot of things, and sometimes, we don't, they're just kids. But sometimes kids get the logic right. Sometimes kids can strip away adultness and all that and go to the core of things. And in this case, they did it. They did it because those 4-part system is what we look at and understand as a major structure. As an anthropologist, or you could say deep structure pattern of language, whatever. Yes, right. Farms that I'm going to show you are organized according to this logic. Let's see if I can get this right. So, and that logic is big house, little house, back house, barn. So, the big house, the front house. If you're really from away, this is the house closest to the street. It's got the living room and bedrooms in it, traditionally and historically and today and all that. The little house, the second one, kitchen. It's just kitchen. In every culture, the kitchen is the heart of the house. It's the heart of the New Hampshire connected house. Back house, I'll talk more about that. Lots of things going on there. And the barn, 4-part system. I imagine these girls are reciting big house, little house, back house, barn as they twirl around. This is Kennebunk, and we see those houses. These are 6 favorites throughout New England, houses, connected farms throughout New England. And I've got thousands. I've got photos of these, of slides and all that, and I can show you all those. Now, they may look different to many of you. I mean, you look at them, these guys are all different. Well, I'm here to say that they're held together by a dominant logic. And that dominant logic is big house, little house, back house, barn. And it became the dominant way that New Hampshire farmers organized their farmsteads. And I would say about 75% in this area, about 75% of farms at some point reach this connected house and barn organization. Little sidebar here, there's also a version of this which is a town connected house and stable. And on the plains here, you've got 20 of them at least that do this. I'm talking about farms, dominant farms. Historically, on the plains here, you have houses that operated, a lawyer or a mechanic would be, and they'd have a cow or something like that. But it wouldn't be a dominant farm. It means the dominant income from the farm. But everything I'm saying applies to those houses on this road that are dominant farms as well. But I'm concentrating today on farm, people who, farmers in the traditional way of thinking about what that means. So, a lot of different stuff out there. It looks different, but underlying pattern is the same, and I'll try to convince you about that. I started out as a young architect. They think they know everything, when you're young and all. And I looked at buildings like this and tried to find their history, because I'm curious, and I go from house to house, and I ask farmers about the history and all that. But what I couldn't do very often was, here's an old house, I forget where I am here, 1790. Pretty young for some of you guys around here. But anyway, we nailed this house down. I don't understand the date here, but little house, back house, I couldn't make any of these structures also go back very far connected. And what's happening? These are all presumably, Puritans come and they kind of make all this stuff, and it goes, and this should be really old and all that, but I'm persistent, and I couldn't get very old farmstead. I'm going around Massachusetts and other areas where there's really old and all that, but I couldn't get this system to go back very far, very historically, and we'll hear about that. But once in a while I got a photograph like this. So here's this house. That's federal, 1790 over there. But then, as opposed to this, there were other buildings over here, other barns in this case over here. And because I've done the research here and all that, these are out in the field about 30 yards from this place and all that, disconnected and all that. And so that had started to happen over and over again. Well, what's happening here? What's going on here? So I'm persistent, and I keep going and try to ask questions. One of the things I've done, and for the heart of my research, is to look at 300 farms where I've actually measured, done the actual documentation of it and all that. And I get a history of the development of farmsteads. Most farmsteads aren't built all at one time. So they're built over time, and especially in an old place like this, there's a kind of constant change, 3 centuries almost, or something like that. So anyway, this is what happened, and you know, some of you could say farms change, and they do change over time all throughout the country in some ways, but what happens in New England is different, and in New Hampshire, and right here in Kingston. And that is that we have a stage of farming where we have separate house and separate barn, and then we have a stage later where they're connected together, and we get connected farm. Wow, okay? And that's what I'm trying to talk about today, what happened. And I asked the why question. What happened is absolutely clear. It was disconnected, and then it became connected. I can nail that research. I can do thousands of farmsteads that I can prove this to you, that happened. But why did it happen? Well, okay. Well, we're just going to hold on for a second over here. A couple of people always, my professor types, I know a lot of people who do research and all that, and they said, well, if you can put an individual farmer to explain, you know, why these happens, that might be useful. So I'm persistent, and so I said, okay, I'll find out. I'll find out some things about that. I'm going to this next. Well, okay, these are the farm couple, Charles and Charlotte Bennett, who made this connected farm. I'll just go back and just see. So Charles marries Charlotte Nevers over here, and then he inherits a pretty well-off farm over there. And within a 20-year period, they make this. And what they did.
They got horses too.
Say again?
They got horses in the first setup.
Horses.
That's for the farmers, like, you know, those kinds of doors.
Okay, we're gonna get the horses. Okay, I'm gonna get to the horse story in just a second. Okay, fine. So there's an order to this. Okay, so what they did, what Charles and Charlotte did, is they had this sort of federal style house over here. The kitchen was in the back of this house. If you know the floor plan of this, there's 2 front rooms. Kitchen's in the back of that. They took the kitchen over there and they made the kitchen in the L. Hundreds of thousands of times this goes out here, this doesn't, and we'll talk about that in just a second, but that's what Charles and Charlotte do. So there's the kitchen over there. They extend the L over there, and they take the horse barn, is what you're looking at over here, and they move it into line, and they put it there. A horse barn, usually a stable, we can usually see this kind of structure, the door to one side. When you see a door shut to one side, stable, that's what it is. Often it's an English barn, as I'll talk about, that's turned sideways, but we'll get into that in a little while. But anyway, that's what they did. They took down these old, presumably bad English barn and carriageways, a carriage shed over here. And they got a barn about 3 miles away, disassembled it and put it up over here and connected farm. Just like that. But this became connected in this way about 1872, 75 or something like that. Okay, so, and I asked that question, why did they connect their house and the barn? And I look at my students and I say, well, he's a farmer and he did this. And then I say, but no, I kid you all the time, and I could be kidding you now, and is he really a farmer? Doesn't look like a farmer, does he? My students don't know farm from, skyscrapers, so what do they know about that? And I ask you, is Charles a farmer?
Sure.
How do we know he's a farmer? Keep looking. There's one answer here. It has to do with this. What am I doing? Take a look at his hand. When I first started out, I remember shaking my couple farmers' hands, and I would always go, whoa, take your glove off, man. Okay. What you're looking at is a farm hand that is swollen and beaten by a lifetime of work, and that's what Charles Bennett has right there. That's a swollen hand, and that's what every mechanic has, and that's what every farmer has that I've ever shaken his hand, because a lifetime of farming, you've got hands that look. This is an architect's hand. It's a little like it. So look, that's that, and this is the farmer. He is the farmer. He made this, Charles, and Charles put this together, and they made this, and hundreds of thousands of farmers throughout New England did the same thing. And now I ask you, because I'm a professor, we have an exam question over here, why did Charles and Charlotte take this very good farmstead? This was not falling down. This was nothing wrong with this building. Well, relatively wealthy, Nevers are one of the leading farmers there and all that. But why did they do all this? And the answer is, Winter.